6 months after the Battle of Seoul, the galaxy looked completely different. The great crystal halls of Nexus Prime were silent and empty. The Council of 12 Species that had ruled for 50,000 years no longer existed. In its place, something new was growing, something the galaxy had never seen before. Ambassador Taekwon walked through the halls where he had once stood alone and said no to galactic tyranny. Now those same halls bustled with representatives from hundreds of species, all working together to build a better future. The difference was simple but revolutionary. These representatives were here by choice, not by force. The transformation had begun almost immediately after news of humanity's victory spread. On the mining world of Arcturus 7, enslaved workers had stopped reporting to their jobs. On the factory planet of Rigel 3, beings who had never seen their families began walking away from their production lines. Throughout Council space, the word "no" became a rallying cry for freedom. Admiral Jin Woo, now Supreme Commander of the Free Worlds Alliance, met with former Council members who had requested peace talks. The meeting took place aboard the Indomitable, which had become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. The Korthic representative, General Thane, was one of the few surviving members of the Council's original leadership. His dragon-like species had once terrorized dozens of worlds. Now he sat across from Jin Woo, asking for terms. "Your species has won," Thane admitted, his voice heavy with defeat. "The Council's authority is broken. Species that have paid tribute for thousands of years declaring independence. Our fleets refuse to fight. What do you want from us?" Jin Woo studied the alien general carefully. This being had once commanded fleets that destroyed entire civilizations. Now he was asking humanity for mercy. "We want what we've always wanted." Jin Woo replied, "Freedom. Not just for humanity, but for every species in the galaxy. The tribute system ends today. The labor camps close today. Every enslaved being goes home today." General Thane looked confused. "And what tribute will you demand from us? What will be our punishment for 50,000 years of rule?" "No tribute," Jin Woo said simply. "No punishment beyond making things. Right, help us free the enslaved species. Share your technology for peaceful purposes. Join the Free Worlds Alliance as equals, not as conquerors." The concept was so foreign to the former council member that he struggled to understand it. A victorious species that didn't demand tribute? Conquerors who chose to liberate rather than enslave. It violated everything the galaxy had learned about power over 50 millennia. President Yubin addressed the first galactic assembly of free worlds from the same chamber where the council had once demanded tribute. But instead of 12 species dictating terms to hundreds, now hundreds of species worked together to solve problems. "Today marks the end of the tribute system," she announced to representatives from across the galaxy. "Today marks the beginning of cooperation instead of domination. Every species here has the right to say no to anything they don't agree with. That word, that simple word, is the foundation of our new galaxy." Dr. Mi Jun, now Director of Interspecies Relations, worked with liberated worlds to establish new governments. The challenge was enormous. Many species had been enslaved for so long that they had forgotten how to govern themselves. "The Centauri colonies need help establishing democratic systems," she reported to President Yubin. "They've been under tribute rule for 3,000 years. They don't know how to hold elections or write laws that protect individual rights. It was slow work, but it was happening. Species that had been enemies for millennia were learning to work together. Technologies that had been hoarded by the Council were being shared freely. Worlds that had been strip-mined for tribute were being restored to health. Captain Key Day returned from his exploration missions to find a galaxy transformed. His ship, the Pioneer, was now part of a fleet of vessels from dozens of species, all working together to map new regions of space and establish peaceful contact with undiscovered civilizations. "We found 17 new species in the Andromeda. He reported to Admiral Jin Woo. "All of them are still in early stages of development. We've established protocols to contact them when they're ready, but we won't interfere with their natural growth." It was a revolutionary concept, letting species develop on their own instead of conquering them the moment they achieve space flight. The Free Worlds Alliance would defend these young civilizations from anyone who tried to enslave them, but it wouldn't rule them. Captain Nate now commanded a fleet of former Council vessels that had been converted to rescue ships. Her mission was to locate and free the thousands of labor camps scattered throughout the galaxy. Camp Complex Omega-7 has been liberated, she reported from the bridge of the former Korthic Dreadnought Liberation. We freed 43,000 beings from 17 different species. Medical teams are treating them now, and transport ships are taking them home. Some of the freed beings had been in camps for so long that they didn't remember their homeworlds. Others had been born in captivity and had never seen freedom. But all of them learned the word that had started their liberation: no. Engineer Haina worked on Earth's newest project, a massive space station called Unity Station. Built with technology shared by dozens of species, it would serve as the headquarters for the Free Worlds Alliance. Unlike Nexus Prime, which had been designed to intimidate, Unity Station was built to welcome. The Vorthan engineering teams have completed the gravity systems, she reported. The Zelani have installed the communication networks. The Nethyak have provided the atmospheric processors. Every species has contributed something to make this work. Dr. Solri, now Earth's chief cultural officer, studied reports from across the galaxy. The changes were happening faster than anyone had imagined possible. Rebellion movements have succeeded on over 300 worlds, she told President Yubin. Former tribute species are establishing democratic governments. Even some council species are asking to join the Free Worlds Alliance as equal members. But the most remarkable change was happening in the minds of beings throughout the galaxy. For 50,000 years, the concept of refusing authority had been unthinkable. Now, children on 1,000 worlds were learning that they had the right to say no to things they didn't like. On the former factory world of Vega 5, young beings who had been destined for lives of labor were instead attending schools and learning about art, science, and philosophy. On the mining colonies of the Tau Ceti system, families were reuniting for the first time in generations. The transformation wasn't perfect. Some former council loyalists tried to restart the tribute system. Pirates and criminals took advantage of the chaos to raid vulnerable worlds. But the Free Worlds Alliance responded to every threat with the same determination that had defeated the Council's great fleet. Ambassador Taekwon stood in the memorial garden that had been built where the council chamber once stood. A simple stone plaque marked the spot where he had spoken the word that changed galactic history. The inscription was simple: here stood tyranny, here fell oppression. Here humanity said no, and the galaxy remembered how to be free. Children from dozens of species played in the garden, their laughter echoing through halls that had once known only the silence of absolute power. They were the first generation in 50,000 years to grow up truly free, and they would never know a galaxy where saying no was forbidden. As Taekwon watched them play, he smiled. Humanity's tribute to the galaxy hadn't been ships or resources, or people. It had been a single word that reminded everyone what freedom meant. And that word would echo through the stars forever. The Council's Great Armada arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly when their calculations predicted. 53,000 ships from 12 different species, arranged in perfect battle formation. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, and it had come to destroy a single small world. Grand Admiral Velik stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. The ship was 3 miles long and carried enough firepower to burn the surface off a planet. Around it, the Council fleet stretched in all directions like a mechanical constellation. Begin standard conquest formation, Velik ordered. Position the planet killers at maximum range. Prepare to broadcast surrender demands. This will be over within the hour. The plan was simple and had worked for 50,000 years. The massive fleet would appear, demonstrate overwhelming force, and demand immediate surrender. When the terrified species inevitably capitulated, They would become tribute-paying members of the galactic community. Clean, efficient, and effective, but as the Council fleet moved into Earth's solar system, they encountered something that had never happened before in galactic history. The humans didn't send frantic surrender signals. They didn't broadcast pleas for mercy. Instead, they sent a single message that confused every alien commander. "Welcome to Sol System," the transmission said. "You are entering human space without permission. You have 30 seconds to reverse course or you will be considered hostile targets." Grand Admiral Velik stared at the communication display in disbelief. 30 seconds? They're giving us 30 seconds to retreat? Do they not understand that we have 50,000 ships? His intelligence officer, a floating Zalani, pulsed with confused thoughts. "Admiral, our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Whatever the humans have been building, it's much larger than we anticipated." That's when the first shock came. As the 30-second deadline expired, space around the Council fleet suddenly filled with objects that hadn't been there before. Hundreds of human ships materialized out of nowhere, their stealth systems deactivating in perfect coordination. "Commander." Ajun of the stealth destroyer Ghost watched from his position inside the enemy formation. His ship and 50 others like it had been hiding in the asteroid belt for 2 weeks, waiting for this moment. "All stealth units, this is Ghost Command," he transmitted on the secure frequency. "Execute Operation Thunderstrike. Light them up." The hidden human ships opened fire simultaneously. But these weren't the primitive energy weapons the Council expected. These were kinetic kill vehicles moving at significant fractions of light speed, quantum torpedoes that could phase through energy shields, and particle beams that could cut through battleship armor like paper. The Council's perfect formation exploded into chaos as ships throughout their fleet suddenly found themselves under attack from enemies that had been invisible moments before. The Korthak heavy cruiser Devastator simply vanished as a human kinetic projectile tore through it from bow to stern. The Vorthan command ship Iron Fist broke apart as quantum torpedoes materialized inside its hull. "Impossible!" Velik roared. "Where did they come from? Our sensors showed empty space." But the surprises were just beginning. From the direction of Earth's moon, something massive began to move. The asteroid that Council scouts had identified as Luna Base Mining Operation. Omega was revealing its true nature. Captain Naate smiled as the Valhalla dropped its camouflage. The battle station was larger than most Council capital ships, and it had been designed for one purpose: to fight impossible odds and win. "All weapon systems, fire at will," she ordered. "Show them what human engineering can do." The Valhalla's main cannon fired once. The beam of coherent energy reached across 3 million miles of space and touched the Council fleet's command vessel. The Eternal Dominion, Grand Admiral Velok's pride and flagship, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was expanding gas and debris throughout the Council fleet. Alien commanders frantically tried to understand what was happening. Their overwhelming numerical advantage was meaningless when enemies could appear from nowhere and weapons could reach across impossible distances. "Emergency jump!" the new Korthak commander screamed. "Get us out of here!" But humanity had prepared for that too. As Council ships tried to escape into hyperspace, they found their jump drives failing. The entire solar system was surrounded by gravitational interference generators that made faster-than-light travel impossible. Dr. Sol Ree watched the battle from Earth's command center, her translation devices working frantically to decode enemy communications. "They're trapped," she reported to President Yubin. "The gravity wells are working perfectly. They can't retreat and they can't call for reinforcements." Admiral Jinwoo chose that moment to reveal humanity's greatest surprise. The Indomitable had been hiding behind Earth itself, masked by the planet's gravity signature. Now it moved into open space, and the Council fleet finally saw what human military engineering could really accomplish. The ship was impossible. It was twice the size of the largest Council dreadnought, armed with weapons that violated several laws of physics, and protected by shields that seemed to absorb incoming fire and convert it into more power for the ship's systems. "This is Admiral Jin Woo of the United Earth Defense Force," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You came here to destroy our world and enslave our people. Instead, you will learn why humanity's answer will always be no." The Indomitable opened fire, and the space around it filled with destruction. Every shot hit its target with impossible accuracy. Every target hit was completely destroyed. The ship moved through the Council fleet like a predator among prey. Untouchable and unstoppable. Captain Kide and his survey ship, Pioneer, joined the battle from the outer system, along with dozens of other vessels that had been pretending to be civilian craft. They swarmed the Council fleet's flanks like angry hornets. "This is Pioneer to all units," he transmitted. "Remember, we're not trying to capture their ships. We're trying to send a message. Leave enough survivors to tell the galaxy what happened here." The battle that the Council expected to last 1 hour stretched into 6. Their massive numerical advantage became meaningless as human tactics proved superior to anything they had encountered. Ships that should have been easy targets moved like fighters. Weapons that looked primitive hit with the force of stellar cannons. Strategies that had worked for 50,000 years failed completely against human innovation. Engineer Haine coordinated the defense from Luna Base, watching displays that showed the systematic destruction of the galaxy's most powerful fleet. "Sector 7 reports complete enemy elimination," she announced. "Sector 12 shows minimal Council resistance remaining. Admiral, at current rates, will have eliminated the entire fleet within 2 hours." But Admiral Jin Woo wasn't interested in complete destruction. This battle was about more than military victory. It was about sending a message to every species in the galaxy. "All units, begin capture operations," he ordered. "Take prisoners. Disable ships rather than destroying them. Let some of them survive." To carry word back to the Council. As the battle wound down, the scope of humanity's victory became clear. Of the 53,000 ships that had entered Earth's solar system, fewer than 5,000 remained functional. The greatest fleet in galactic history had been shattered by a species the Council considered primitive. The few surviving Council ships limped away from Earth, their crews traumatized by an experience none of them could have imagined. They had come expecting to crush a minor rebellion. Instead, they had encountered something the galaxy hadn't seen in 50,000 years. A species that was genuinely better at war than the Council's professional military, Daemin, a human war correspondent who had been aboard the Indomitable during the battle, prepared his report for broadcast across the galaxy. "Today the galaxy learned that humanity's word no has meaning," he announced. "The Council sent 50,000 ships to destroy Earth. Earth sent them home with a message: freedom cannot be conquered by force." As news of the battle spread, something unprecedented began happening throughout Council space. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved species looked up at the stars and whispered a word they had forgotten how to say. No, the rebellion that the Council had come to crush in its infancy had instead achieved the impossible. Humanity had proven that the galaxy's rulers could be defeated. The word no had power. And for the first time in 50,000 years, the Council's absolute authority was no longer absolute. The war for galactic freedom had begun with a single word. Now it would continue with 1,000 species who remembered what that word meant. The Council's massive fleet was still 2 weeks away from Earth, when the galaxy began to see something that shocked them more than humanity's refusal. The humans weren't running. They weren't begging for mercy. They were preparing for war with the enthusiasm of a species that had been waiting their entire history for this fight. On Earth, President Yubin addressed the Global Assembly from the Emergency Command Center. Representatives from every nation watched as she spoke words that would be remembered forever. "For over 200 years, humanity has prepared for this moment," she announced. "Not because we knew aliens would demand our surrender, but because we knew that someday someone would try to take our freedom. Today is that day." Lieutenant Biomi coordinated the most massive evacuation in human history from the orbital station above Earth, but these weren't the panicked flights of a defeated people. These were carefully planned operations that had been practiced for decades. Colony ship New Horizon reports successful evacuation of Kepler-438 civilians, she announced to the command staff. They're heading to the Centauri deep storage facility. Colony ship Freedom's Call has completed evacuation of the Vega mining families. All non-combatants are being moved to fortified systems beyond Council scanner range. What the Council didn't know was that humanity had been building these deep storage facilities for 50 years. Hidden in distant star systems, they were more than refugee camps. They were complete industrial complexes designed to keep human civilization alive, even if Earth itself was destroyed. Dr. Wu Jin emerged from the secret levels beneath Geneva that most Earth governments didn't know existed. For 30 years, he had been developing weapons and technology in complete secrecy. Now his projects were finally seeing daylight. Project Thor is operational, he reported to Admiral Jinwoo. Every asteroid in the solar system larger than 50 meters has been fitted with gravitational drives and guidance systems. We can turn them into kinetic kill vehicles with 18 hours notice. Admiral Jinwoo studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. What about Project Heimdall? The stealth satellites are in position throughout this arm of the galaxy. Wu Jin replied, any Council ship that enters human space will be tracked from the moment it drops out of hyperspace. They won't be able to surprise us. But the most shocking revelation was Project Mjolnir. Hidden in the asteroid belt, humanity had spent 40 years building something the Council couldn't imagine, a mobile fortress the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Captain Ate stood on the bridge of what had once been called Mining Station Omega. Now its true name was revealed, the Battle Station Valhalla. Through the armored viewing ports, she could see Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel. All weapon systems are online, her weapons officer reported. The main cannon is charged and ready. Fighters' bays are fully loaded. We are ready for battle. The Valhalla wasn't alone. Throughout the solar system, installations that had appeared to be simple mining operations or research stations were revealing their true nature. Humanity had turned their entire star system into a fortress. On the mining world of Kepler-442, Captain Kide was discovering that his survey mission had always been something more. Hidden in his ship's cargo bay were weapon systems he had never seen before. His crew was receiving training manuals for combat operations they had never been told about. Sir, his engineer said, looking confused at the new equipment. This mining laser has been modified. It can cut through battleship armor. And these survey drones, they're actually nuclear missiles. Kide wasn't surprised. He had always suspected that their peaceful exploration missions had a military purpose. Now he understood why every human ship was built with military-grade armor and weapons mounting points. Send word to all survey ships in this sector, he ordered. It's time to stop pretending we're just explorers. Throughout human space, the same revelation was happening. Merchant ships revealed hidden weapon bays. Colony transports activated concealed armor plating. Research vessels began broadcasting military identification codes that had been dormant. For years, the Council's intelligence networks tried desperately to count humanity's real military strength. What they found didn't make sense. According to their data, humans had 300 military vessels. But as they watched, that number kept growing. Mining ships became destroyers. Transport vessels became cruisers. Survey ships became scouts. And raiders. Grand Admiral Velek received the updated intelligence reports with growing confusion. The humans claim to have only 300 warships, he told his staff. But our scouts are detecting over 2,000 vessels taking military positions throughout their space. How is this possible? His intelligence chief, a spidery Vorthan, consulted the data streams flowing from across human space. It appears that every human civilian vessel has hidden military capabilities, it reported. Their mining ships have weapons that rival our cruisers. Their transport vessels have armor that could withstand direct bombardment. It's as if their entire civilization has been designed for war. This was something the Council had never encountered. Before, most species built their fleets after joining the galactic community. They followed standard designs and tactics that the Council understood. Humanity had developed in isolation, creating strategies and technologies that no one had seen before. Engineer Hyena worked around the clock at Luna Base, coordinating with secret facilities throughout the solar system. Weapons that had been hidden for decades were coming online. Defense systems that had been disguised as civilian infrastructure were revealing their true purpose. The particle cannon array on Mars is fully operational, she reported to Admiral Jinwoo. The Jupiter orbital platforms are ready to engage. The Saturn ring mines have been converted to fighter production facilities. We can build 1,000 new ships per week if needed. Admiral Jinwoo stood in the command center of the Indomitable, watching status reports flow in from across human space. Every day brought new revelations about his species' hidden preparations. Even he was amazed at the scope of what they had built in secret. "How long have we been preparing for this war?" he asked President Yubin during a secure communication. "Since the day we invented the radio," she replied. "Since the day we looked up at the stars and wondered who else might be looking back. We always knew that contact with aliens could mean either friendship or conquest. We prepared for both. But humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their hidden weapons or secret bases. It was something that the Council couldn't understand because they had never encountered it before. A species that was genuinely excited about fighting impossible odds on every human world, in every ship, among every crew. The mood wasn't fear or despair. It was anticipation. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other, surviving disasters and overcoming challenges that should have destroyed them. Now they faced the ultimate challenge, and they were ready. Captain Min-ho received a message from his daughter on Mars Colony. She was 15 years old and should have been terrified. Instead, her message was full of excitement. "Dad, the teachers told us about the Council fleet coming to destroy us. Everyone at school is talking about it. We're not scared. We're going to show these aliens what humans can do. Make them regret ever threatening our home." Similar messages were flowing throughout human space. Children were volunteering to help with defense preparations. Elderly people were sharing stories about Earth's great wars and promising that humanity had faced worse odds before. Artists were creating songs and poems about the coming battle. The Council expected humanity to beg for mercy as their fleet approached. Instead, they found a species that treated their arrival like a cosmic sporting event, dangerous and terrible, but also the most exciting thing that had ever happened. Dr. Sol-Ri analyzed the latest Council communications from her bunker beneath Geneva. The enemy fleet was massive and terrifying, but she had noticed something interesting in their transmissions. "They're confused," she reported to President Yubin. "Their entire strategy is based on intimidating us into surrender. But we're not intimidated, we're celebrating. They don't know how to respond to that." The Council had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years through fear and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy that refused to be afraid. They had never encountered a species that saw impossible odds as an exciting challenge rather than a reason to surrender. As the enemy fleet moved closer to human space, both sides continued their preparations. The Council assembled the largest armada in galactic history, confident that raw numbers would crush the human rebellion. Humanity revealed weapons and defenses that had been hidden for generations, ready to prove that their word "no" meant something. But the greatest shock was yet to come, because humanity had one more secret that even their own people didn't fully understand. They were very, very good at war. The news of humanity's refusal spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On thousands of worlds, beings who had never heard the word "no" used against the Council struggled to understand what had happened. In the crystal halls of Nexus Prime, the 12 ruling species held emergency meetings that lasted for days. Grand Admiral Velik of the Hegemony's First Fleet was a being that had lived for 3,000 years. His species, the Korthik, looked like dragons with scales that could deflect energy weapons. He had conquered 47 star systems for the Council. He had never lost a battle. Standing before the assembled Council, Velik's voice rumbled like Distant thunder. In 50,000 years, no species has dared to refuse tribute, he declared. This human insolence cannot be allowed to stand. If word spreads that the council can be defied, our entire system will collapse. The Speaker of the council, still glowing with angry red light, agreed completely. The humans must be made an example, it announced. Their destruction will remind every species in the galaxy why the council's will cannot be questioned. Around the chamber, the other council members nodded their approval. The Vorthan representatives clicked their metal claws in agreement. The floating Zalani pulsed with satisfied thoughts. The gas-breathing Nethiak hissed their pleasure through toxic clouds. Grand Admiral Velik began listing the forces that would be assembled. The first fleet of the Korthak would lead the attack, 5,000 ships armed with planet-killing weapons. The Vorthan would contribute their mechanical dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small moon. The Zalani would provide their mine ships, vessels controlled by pure thought that could move faster than anything else in space. Dr. Sol Ree, back on Earth, sat in a secure bunker beneath the capital city. Around her, screens showed intelligence reports flowing in from across the galaxy. Every council species was mobilizing their fleets. The numbers were terrifying. They're not just sending a punishment force, she told President Yubin. They're sending everything they have, 50,000 ships, maybe more. President Yubin studied the reports with calm eyes. She was a small woman, but she had led Earth through 2 economic collapses and a war with Mars colonies. She did not frighten easily. How long do we have? She asked. 6 weeks, maybe 7, Sol Ree replied. It takes time to coordinate that many different species. But when they come, it will be with enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. Like Earth. In orbit around Earth, Admiral Jinwu stood on the bridge of the battleship Indomitable. The massive vessel was humanity's newest and most powerful warship, but even it looked tiny compared to what was coming. Through the viewing windows he could see the lights of Earth cities far below. Admiral, Captain Ninho reported from his position at the communications station. We're receiving messages from human colonies throughout known space. They're all asking the same question, do we fight or do we run? Jinwu had been expecting this question. Human colonies were scattered across dozens of star systems. Most, were small settlements with minimal defenses. When the council fleet arrived, those colonies would be helpless. Send word to all colony commanders, Jinwu ordered. Begin evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. But the colonies that can fight will stand with Earth. We face this together, or we don't face it at all. On the mining world of Kepler 442, Captain Kide received the Admiral's message aboard his survey ship Pioneer. His crew had been mapping asteroid fields and cataloging resources for the past 2 years. Now they had new orders. Sir, his navigator asked, what are evacuation protocols? I've never heard of them before. Kide smiled grimly. That's because they've been classified until now. Every human colony has hidden weapons and supplies that we've been storing for decades. Every survey ship like ours has military equipment hidden in cargo holds. We've been preparing for this war longer than most people know. The navigator looked confused. Preparing for war with who? We only made contact with aliens 5 years ago. We've been preparing for war with whoever tried to conquer us, Kide explained. It didn't matter if they were aliens, other humans, or something we hadn't imagined yet. Earth learned long ago that freedom has to be defended. Back on Nexus Prime, Grand Admiral Velik was making final preparations for the largest military operation in galactic history. The assembled fleet would be bigger than anything seen since the Great Wars that established the Council's rule 50,000 years ago. The humans have perhaps 300 ships, Velik told his commanders. We will bring 50,000. Their technology is primitive. Their tactics are untested. This will not be a battle. It will be an extermination. The Council's war machine was vast and efficient. Species that had been fighting together for millennia knew how to coordinate their forces. The Korthak provided heavy battleships. The Vorthan built automated fighters that never got tired or afraid. The Zilani created communication networks that linked every ship's mind together, but as the fleets gathered at the galaxy's edge, something else was happening. On worlds throughout Council space, beings who had lived under tribute rule for thousands of years were talking quietly among themselves. The humans had said no to the Council. It was impossible, but it had happened on the factory world of Regulus 7. Workers who had never seen their families whispered about the small species that refused to surrender. On the mining colonies of the Vega system, slaves who had forgotten their homeworld's names remembered what the word freedom meant. Engineer Haina worked frantically at Luna Base, Earth's most secret facility. Hidden on the dark side of the moon, the base had been built over 30 years using mining operations as cover. Now its true purpose was revealed. Bring the defense grid online, she ordered her teams. Activate all hidden weapon platforms. If the Council wants a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget. Around Luna Base, structures that had been disguised as simple mining equipment began to transform. Massive rail guns emerged from fake storage buildings. Missile launchers rose from beneath artificial crater floors. Shield generators powered up for the first time, creating energy barriers that could stop planet-killing attacks. The galaxy was mobilizing for the greatest war in its history. On one side stood the Council's vast empire, backed by 50,000 years of absolute power and fleets that had never known defeat. On the other side stood humanity, 300 ships, 37 colonies, and 7 billion people who had just learned that their word no meant they were about to fight for their very existence. But as both sides prepared for battle, neither fully understood what was about to happen. The Council expected to crush a small rebellion quickly and efficiently. Humanity hoped to make their destroyers pay a terrible price for their victory. What neither side knew was that this war would change the galaxy forever. The word no had been spoken. It could never be taken back. And with it, 50,000 years of absolute rule were about to come to an end. The journey back to Earth had been the longest 2 days of Taekwon's life. He had spent most of the time in his cabin, staring at reports from home. President Yubin had called emergency meetings with every world leader. Admiral Jinwoo had quietly moved the fleet into defensive positions. Dr. Solri had worked without sleep, studying every detail of Council law and history. Now they were returning to Nexus Prime. The crystal planet looked the same as before, but everything felt different. This time they carried Earth's answer. The Council chamber was more crowded than before. Word had spread across the galaxy that the humans were returning to give their formal surrender. Representatives from dozens of species had come to watch. This was always a popular event, seeing a proud young species accept their place in the galactic order. Taekwon walked across the crystal floor again. His footsteps seemed louder this time. Behind him, Sol Ri and Bio Yun followed in silence. All three humans wore their best uniforms. If this was going to be humanity's moment in galactic history, they would look dignified. The Speaker of the Council rose from its crystal throne. The massive being's light was brighter today, perhaps showing its pleasure at another successful tribute collection. Human delegation, the Speaker announced. You return to us with your species' acceptance of Council tribute. This is as it should be, as it has always been. Around the hall, alien delegates leaned forward. Some had recording devices. Others had telepathic abilities that would broadcast this moment across their homeworlds. The surrender of a new species was always entertainment for the older races. Captain Min Ho watched from his ship in Earth's orbital defense grid. Every human vessel in the system was monitoring the transmission. Admiral Jin Woo had given orders that every sailor and soldier should witness this moment. Whatever happened next, they would all face it together. Engineer Hai Na worked frantically at Luna Base, making final preparations for protocols that might never be used. The massive industrial complex on the moon's dark side was hidden from galactic sensors. If Earth's answer was what she thought, it would be Luna Base would become the most important facility in human space. Back in the council chamber, the speaker gestured toward a glowing platform in the center of the hall. Step forward, human representative, it commanded. Speak the words that will welcome your species into the galactic community. Say that humanity accepts the Council's wisdom and will pay tribute as determined. Taekwon walked to the platform. The crystal floor beneath his feet began to glow. Translation devices throughout the hall activated automatically. His words would be heard and understood by every species present. More importantly, they would be broadcast live across thousands of worlds. This was the moment every species faced. The moment when they formally gave up their independence and became part of the Council's system. The words were always the same. A long speech about accepting galactic law and thanking the Council for their wisdom. Then a formal listing of what tribute would be paid, and when the speaker settled back on its throne, ready to hear familiar words of submission. Sol Ri had her translation device ready, though it wouldn't be needed. Bio Yun stood at attention, his face showing no emotion. Both of them knew what was coming. On Earth, President Yubin watched from the emergency command center deep beneath the capital. She had made the decision that Taekwon would carry to the stars. Now she could only wait to see how the galaxy would react. Taekwon looked up at the speaker. Then he turned to face the gathered representatives. His voice was clear and steady when he spoke. The United Earth government has considered the Council's tribute demand carefully. He began. The aliens nodded approvingly. This was the standard opening. Soon would come the acceptance speech and the formal surrender. We have discussed your terms with our leaders, our people, and our military commanders, Taekwon continued, more nodding. Some of the alien delegates were already looking bored. They had heard this speech hundreds of times from hundreds of different species. After complete consideration of your demands, Taekwon said, his voice growing stronger, humanity's official response is as follows. The hall grew quiet, recording. Devices focused on the small human standing alone on the glowing platform. Across the galaxy, billions of beings waited to hear another species accept their fate. Taekwon looked directly into the main recording device. He thought about Earth, blue and beautiful and free. He thought about human children who would never know slavery. He thought about the fleet Admiral Jin Wood spent decades building to protect humanity's future. He spoke one word. No. The word echoed through the crystal hall. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The translation devices flickered as they tried to process what they had heard. The Speaker of the Council tilted its massive crystalline head. The gesture looked confused, as if it couldn't understand the sound that had just been made. Repeat your statement, the Speaker commanded. Taekwon's was even stronger the second time. No, humanity refuses your tribute demands. We will not surrender our ships. We will not give you our resources. We will not provide our people for your labor camps. The answer is no. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Alien delegates began making sounds of shock and confusion. Several species had never heard the word no used in response to council demands. Some didn't even have words in their languages for such defiance. The Vorthan ambassador, a spider-like creature made of living metal, rose from its seat. This is impossible, it declared. No species has ever refused council tribute. The human must be malfunctioning. Sol Ri stepped forward. Ambassador Taekwon is speaking for all of humanity. Our answer is final. Captain Min Ho, watching from Earth orbit, felt a wild grin spread across his face. Around him, the crew of his starship began cheering. Throughout the solar system, human vessels received the transmission and erupted in celebration. At Luna Base, Engineer Haina activated emergency protocols. Warning lights flashed red as hidden facilities came online. The moon's secret weapons began charging their systems. The Speaker of the Council rose to its full height. The crystal being's light turned from blue to angry red. You do not understand, it said, its mental voice now cold and threatening. Tribute is not optional. Tribute is the law of the galaxy. Species that do not pay tribute are destroyed. Taekwon looked up at the towering alien without fear. Then you will have to destroy us, he said calmly. Because our answer will always be no. The chamber fell silent again. In 50,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever spoken such words. The very concept of refusing the council was so foreign that some aliens couldn't process what they were hearing, but as the humans prepared to leave the chamber, something else began to happen. On distant worlds, other enslaved species were watching the broadcast. In labor camps and tribute colonies, beings who had forgotten the meaning of freedom heard a small species speak one impossible word, no. For the first time in 50 millennia. The word echoed through the galaxy, and with it came a sound that the council had not heard in ages, the sound of hope awakening in enslaved hearts. The humans walked out of the chamber with their heads held high. Behind them, the Council of 12 Species began planning humanity's destruction. But across the galaxy, something had changed forever. One word had shattered 50,000 years of absolute control. One word had reminded the galaxy what freedom meant. No. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than any building on Earth. Its walls were made of pure crystal that caught light from 3 different suns. The ceiling was so high that clouds formed near the top. Ambassador Taekwon had seen many amazing things in his life, but this place still made him feel small. He walked slowly across the smooth floor. His footsteps echoed in the huge space. Behind him walked 2 other humans. Dr. Sol-Ri carried a small device that would translate alien languages. Captain Bio-Yun kept his hand near his sidearm, even though weapons would be useless here, around. The hall sat the 12 most powerful species in the galaxy. Each one ruled hundreds of worlds. Each one had technology that could destroy planets. Together, they had controlled the galaxy for 50,000 years. The Speaker of the Council was a being made of living crystal. It stood 20 feet tall and glowed with its own light. When it moved, the sound was like breaking glass. Its voice could be heard without words, speaking directly into minds. Human delegation, the speaker said. The words formed inside Taekwon's head. You stand before the Galactic Hegemony Council. We have watched your species for 100 of your years. You have now reached the level where you must pay tribute to the Council. Taekwon had prepared for this moment his entire life. Earth's leaders had known this day would come. Every species that could travel between stars had to face the Council. Every species had to pay. Dr. Sol-Ri whispered the translation, even though they could all understand. She had studied every alien language for 20 years. Her job was to make sure nothing was lost in translation. Every word mattered here. The tribute system has kept peace in the galaxy, the speaker continued. Young species give resources to older, wiser ones. In return, you receive protection and knowledge. This is the natural order. Around the hall, the other council members watched. The Vorthan looked like giant spiders made of metal. The Zilani were floating jellyfish with minds that could read thoughts. The Korthak had scales like dragons and breathed poison gas. All of them had once been young species like humanity. All of them had paid tribute and joined the system. Captain Bio-Yun had fought in 3 wars on Earth. He had seen terrible things and done worse things to keep his planet safe. But standing here, surrounded by beings that could end his entire species, even he felt afraid. The speaker raised one crystal arm. The hall became completely silent. The Council has determined humanity's tribute, it announced. You will provide the following items within 1 standard galactic year. A hologram appeared in the center of the hall. It showed Earth floating in space, beautiful and blue. Then it showed numbers and lists in glowing text. First, you will surrender 40% of your military vessels to Council control. These ships will serve the greater galactic good under our command. Taekwon felt his heart sink. 40% of Earth's fleet meant thousands of ships. It meant millions of sailors and soldiers. Earth had spent 50 years building that fleet to protect their colonies. Second, you will provide 60% of your rare Earth elements annually. These materials are needed for Council projects throughout the galaxy. Sol-Ri calculated quickly in her head. 60% of Earth's rare metals meant shutting down most of their space industry. It meant no new ships, no new colonies, no growth for decades. Third, you will provide 100,000 humans each year for labor in Council territories. These individuals will serve for 20 standard years before being eligible for return. The hall stayed silent, but Taekwon could feel the weight of those words. 100,000 people every year. 2 million people every 20 years. They were talking about slavery, even if they used prettier words. Bo Yun's hand moved closer to his weapon. He knew it was pointless, but the military man in him wanted to fight. Sol Ri put a gentle hand on his arm to calm him. The speaker continued reading the demands. They wanted Earth's quantum communication technology. They wanted access to human genetic databases. They wanted detailed maps of every human colony and outpost. By the time the list was finished, humanity would have nothing left but the right to exist. These terms are standard for new species entering the galactic community, the speaker explained. Some species provide more, some provide less, depending on their capabilities. Humanity has been assessed as a Category 7 species, which requires these specific contributions. Taekwon had studied the tribute system for years. He knew that Category 7 was one of the highest levels. It meant the Council saw humans as dangerous enough to need heavy control. What if we refuse? Taekwon asked. His voice was steady, but inside he was shaking. The question caused a ripple of movement around the hall. Several council members made sounds that might have been laughter. The Zilani's tentacles twitched with what looked like amusement. Refuse? The speaker repeated. The words seemed to confuse it. No species has ever refused council tribute in recorded history. The concept is ... meaningless. A new hologram appeared. It showed the wreckage of planets. Burned worlds with no life left on them. Dead systems where stars had been extinguished. This is what happens to species that do not follow galactic law, the speaker said. Not tribute refusal, you understand. That has never happened. This is what happens to species that break other laws. Pirates, rebels, criminals. The message was clear. Even small crimes against the Council brought total destruction. What would happen to a species that refused tribute entirely was beyond imagination. However, the speaker added, the Council is wise and patient. We understand that young species need time to accept their place in the galactic order. You have 72 standard hours to formally accept these terms and begin transfer arrangements. 72 hours. 3 days to decide the future of humanity. Use this time wisely, the speaker advised. Consult with your leaders. Review your options. When you return, you will speak the words of acceptance that every species has spoken. You will join the galactic community as a tribute-paying member. This is the only path forward. The audience was over. Guards that looked like giant beetles came to escort the humans out. Taekwon bowed slightly to the Council, a gesture of respect. That felt like swallowing poison. As they walked back through the crystal halls, Sol Ri whispered to her companions. They're so confident. 50,000 years of never being refused. They can't even imagine the possibility. Bo Yun looked back at the council chamber. Maybe that's their weakness. Taekwon said nothing. He was thinking about the message he would have to send to Earth. He was thinking about President Yubin and Admiral Jinwoo waiting for his report. He was thinking about 7 billion humans who didn't know their freedom had just been sold. The ship that would take them back to Earth was waiting. The journey would take 2 days. That left them 1 day on Earth to prepare humanity's answer. As their small vessel lifted off from Nexus Prime, Taekwon looked down at the planet that ruled the galaxy. From space, it looked peaceful, almost beautiful. It was hard to believe that so much power and cruelty could come from such a quiet world. Sir, Bo Yun said as they entered hyperspace. What do you think we'll tell them? Taekwon stared out at the stars. Somewhere among them was Earth, somewhere among them was home. I don't know, he said quietly. But whatever we say, it will change everything.